is everybody's Wednesday going?
Good, thank you.
Good. Is anybody new joining us tonight? Here for So, does anybody have any news to share with us? Good news, bad news, indifferent news, progress reports?
I've just signed up for the Elite. The next one up from Elite. Sorry, mine's gone blank.
Platinum.
Platinum.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Excellent. Well on you.
And I've signed up for Tough Mudder next year as well.
Oh, yeah, that is some week.
I know. I must have lost the plot somewhere along the line.
I love it. Fantastic. So how are you feeling about the Tough Mudder?
Terrified.
Terrified. Yeah, well, that is a normal feeling. Yes. Excellent. Fantastic. I see some people are having trouble with the sound. Not sure. If you have headphones, try and disconnect them. Excellent. So fantastic. Anybody else got any news for us?
I may have a job interview tomorrow.
Oh, how exciting! And is this a job you've been interested in for a while, or no,
I've
new?
kind of been headhunted.
Oh, wow! What a nod! That's fantastic.
I'm just waiting to see if I get the email to say, yeah, we can fit you in tomorrow.
Great. Oh, wow. Tina, we'll have our fingers and toes crossed for you.
Thank you. I'm like that. I'm not sure because it's like, is it better the devil you know, or is it?
You're just like, you're logging through and you're refreshing the emails and it's like, oh, tomorrow. And yeah, that's understandable.
Good
and
luck,
fingers crossed.
Tina.
Yes.
And it's a great opportunity just to go and find out more.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's what my mum said. Go and listen and see what they're going to say, and then think about it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Any other news, views, thoughts, opinions, progress reports? We're all good.
What did you say, Aofe? Sorry.
Any news, views, opinions, thoughts? Anything since I
I got dumped by text on Monday.
No.
But
Okay.
I spun it round and I took it that it's not anything to do with me. He's the one who's got the problem and moved on. Before I would have tail spun and gone for the junk food and the wine
Well done.
I stuck to my cup of tea and then my glasses of water.
Fantastic. And I love what we're doing here because we're valuing ourselves, we're looking after ourselves, and we're doing what's right for ourselves rather than harming ourselves, like we said, with excessive eating or well done. Wow. That's excellent stuff. But yeah, that's tough. Oh, Nicola, look after yourself.
Yeah, it's only early date. We'd been on one date and then we were supposed to have been going on a date today and everything was hunky-dory, great, chatting Sunday night, chatting Monday morning, and Monday afternoon I got a text saying, sorry, I can't do this.
Like you said, you never know what's going on. And
that's it. He's obviously got stuff going on and I managed to think it's not me, it's his issue.
Yeah, very good. Yeah,
reversed it.
And a
Good
new
job you never wasted any more time on him, Nicola.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Very good perspective. And now you have the opportunity to meet someone better, someone more suited.
I might have a date tomorrow night.
Cheapers. You go, Nicola. Yeah.
I've had 3 years of sort of hiding away and not doing anything, and I bit the bullet and joined a dating site. And this other chap, we've been chatting on and off for a little while, but he's on about meeting up tomorrow night. So
wow,
Who knows? Who knows? I'm just in a better headspace that,
Yeah.
you know, I just take it, and if it goes well, it goes well. If it doesn't, well, it's a night out, isn't it?
That's fantastic. That's a great perspective. Ah, fair play to you. Excellent stuff. All righty. So what are we talking about this evening? Ah, yes, I'm going to share my slides with you. Okay. So what we are going to be chatting about this evening is thinking about our healthy living and some of these sort of places that we can get to with our mental health and our well-being, right? And just starting off with an introduction, right? So just talking about our mental health and well-being, right? So the World Health Organization, right? How do they define mental health? Okay. A state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, and whatever they are, right? Everybody has different abilities. They can cope with the normal stresses of life, right? And Nicola's just given us a really good example there, right? Yeah. So, and look how well Nicola's coping, right? Okay. So we can cope with the normal, because normal stresses are a part of life. We cannot get rid of them. Stress is always going to be a part of our day-to-day. It doesn't mean that we're going to be stressed all the time, but it's part of being a human. We're going to meet stressful events as we go through. And the main thing is we can't avoid stress. Well, I mean, we could try, but we will inevitably fail in that endeavor. But the main thing is that we can learn to cope with it, right? And that's the key. It's down to, and Nicola gave a great example there of coming down to our interpretation of an event, and then that interpretation as to how we respond, right? How we say, right, here I am, and I'm moving forward from this point. What have I got to do to manage this stress? What's going to be unhealthy for me? Right? What's going to be healthy for me? Right? And that's a tough thing to do. But we always want to be thinking about, right, doesn't matter what's thrown my way, I'll be able to cope with it, right? And cope in healthy ways. We can work productively, right? And that could be in our family life. It might be in our job, in our community volunteer work, right? So essentially that we're not feeling very fatigued mentally or physically. We can't concentrate, right? Our mind is jumping from one thing to another. We can't remember what we were doing this morning, right? All of those things are indicative that we're very stressed, but we can work productively and fruitfully, and we're able to make a contribution to his or her community, whether it's your family community, your neighborhood, your community at work, right? That you're able to say, have a conversation with people or give them a compliment or help them out. Or so this is sort of according to World Health Organization, right? That's their definition of mental health, right? So it's not that everything in life is going perfectly and I've no stress and I've no worries and I'm happy all the time. That's not realistic, right? But it's a case that we're in a good place, that we're able to fulfill our full abilities, and we're able to cope with whatever comes our way. Okay, so that's our definition. And then if we think about mental health, right, as on a continuum. So this is one of the big debates, right, in the area of psychology and mental health, is sort of where does mental health end and mental illness begins, right? And that's a difficult thing for us to answer. And this is also around about whether we should sort of be putting people into boxes and giving them diagnoses and things like that, or whether we should be kind of viewing mental health as this continuum. So it's like, think about it, a line, one end, the other end, and your mental health goes up and down that continuum, right? So obviously, if we're in a period of great stress, let's say we're under a lot of pressure at work and we've got all these other things that are going on, maybe we're trying to manage, we have a family member with an illness, something like that, you know, our mental health might go down, right, down the continuum, because we've got a lot going on and it might be harder to look after ourselves. And then equally, right, we can move back up. So things start to improve, right? We can learn to manage. Maybe our responsibilities are lessened a little bit, right? Start to feel better, start to feel healthier. What happens? Our mental health goes back up the continuum. Okay. So at the lower end, what are we going to see? Mental illness. At the higher end, we have great mental health, right? And as I said, we can shift up and down that continuum depending on what's going on, right? So it's just have a little bit of a check in, right? Where do I reckon that I am on the continuum? Mental health up at the top, mental illness at the bottom, right? Okay. So if my slides would like to, thank you, great. Okay, so as we move towards the top end of the continuum, right? Okay, so what does this look like? Mental health. I mean, okay, what's that going to feel like? What's that going to look like for me, right? So we're in a state of thriving, or as we're often calling it as well, flourishing, right? Okay. I mean, what kind of comes to mind? When we use the word flourishing, what comes to mind? What do you visualize? What do you think of?
Doing well.
Doing well. Very good. Yeah, excellent. And what
Feeling
areas of our life?
positive and happy and
Positive
achieving your goals.
and achieving your goals. Very good. Yeah, excellent. So you might have set your goals, you're making progress. Yeah, you're able to work towards them. Very good. Yeah.
Have energy.
Energy. Yeah, as well. Very good. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so we move up to that top end. We feel satisfied with life. It doesn't mean that everything's perfect. It doesn't mean that we have everything that we want. There's still things that we're working towards, goals we're working towards, etc. Right? We have a sense of fulfillment. So it might be that you're fulfilled in your role as a parent, you're fulfilled in your role as a friend, as a partner, in your work, in your community, right? Feel confident in our ability to bounce back from stress. So we recognize that stress is going to be a part of life, but you're saying, yeah, even if that comes around the corner, I'll be able to manage that. And we have an overall feeling that things in life are going as or better than expected. So there's a general sense of, geez, I'm going in the right direction and this is great. Okay. So you might be thinking, well, that doesn't sound much like me at the moment, right? And particularly, right, in the world that we find ourselves in post-COVID, we've got inflation, we've got all of these other things that it's been one thing after another, right, that have been hitting us. So it's understandable that at times, again, based on the environment that we're in and what's happening in society, we start to move down that continuum. So you might be thinking, yeah, that doesn't really describe me right now, right? So you might say, okay, I don't think I'm at that towards that top end of the continuum. I think I'm going to find myself somewhere lower down. Doesn't mean you're down the far end, but I'm somewhere a little bit further down, right? Okay, so at the opposite end, so we've gone from the top end, now we're going to the other end, lower end, right? What do we see here? We're going to see mental illness. So we're going to see significant problems with, say, our mood, right? With our energy. We're going to have sleep problems, anxiety, depression, etc., right? And again, depression is a very common mental health problem. We all have days where we feel, you know, just in a bad mood, or we're just sad, or we're angry, and again, that's part of being human. But what we're thinking about when we're at that opposite end of the continuum, this is sort of a day-to-day that we are feeling quite down, quite anxious, quite stressed, right? So some of the symptoms then that we're looking out for here, again, that sort of depressed mood, a loss of interest or pleasure in almost all activities. So that's where we say, oh, do you know, I used to go out to this, maybe a social group, or I used to go out with my friends or my family, or I used to have my hobbies, but I don't really want to do that anymore. I'm not really bothered. So again, look, our motivation for these things wax and wanes. That's part of being a human. But for the most part, if you're kind of saying, no, I don't want to do any of that, that's usually an indication that we've gone down that far end of the continuum. We've also got feelings of hopelessness. So again, you know, when we're in a good place mentally, even if we've got, you know, negative events going on or stressful events, there is a sense of, I'm going to get through it. It mightn't be pretty and it mightn't work out in the way that I want it to work out, but I will get through it. And things are going to get better and things are going to improve. That's a feeling of hope. But with hopelessness, we're really feeling like I'm stuck in this rut and it's never going to get better. And, you know, I'm just going to stay in this place. And then it also has an impact on things like our self-confidence. So we might have feelings of worthlessness and then fatigue, as we were talking about. And that's both mental and physical, right? So as you can imagine, very different to that state of flourishing, right, that we talked about. So at this point, you might be thinking, well, I'm not flourishing, but I don't think I've got a mental illness either, right? So where am I likely to be? Where am I likely to be on the continuum, right? And so what we've got to do is, we know we've got these two ends of the continuum, but what's actually going on in the middle, right? And what we've got to be able to do is to kind of understand this mental state. And this mental state is what we call languishing. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that term before. It's very much a term that's used in the area of what we call positive psychology. Now, positive psychology is not all, everything's great and wonderful, and because that's toxic positivity and we don't want that. But positive psychology is very much centered around, we spend a lot of our time trying to lower our stress, trying to reduce our anger, our unhealthy anger, trying to improve our depression. But do we spend as much time trying to boost our joy, trying to boost our pleasure, trying to boost our happiness? Because if we are kind of in that place where we are feeling, you know, maybe a bit worthless, or we're fatigued or things like that, it's not going to be enough for us to just try to, you know, improve those negative emotions. And because that doesn't mean that the positive emotions are just going to follow suit. They don't always. So the movement of positive psychology is very much centered around boosting the good, boosting the positive emotions, right? And the ways in which we can do that. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. And languishing is what positive psychology has identified as kind of in the middle there, right? So if we have a look at here, this is what our kind of continuum looks like, right? So we've got on the lower end, we've got our mental illness. And really what's happening is we are not coping. We are struggling to get out of bed. We're struggling to fulfill our duties. We are really, really struggling, right? Okay. And then if we go up to the next step, we've got languishing, right? Which is kind of very much in the middle, right? And we're going to understand this state now in a minute. And then we can move up and we can be moderately mentally healthy, right? We mightn't be totally flourishing, but we're doing pretty well. We're knocking on the door. And then if we're in that complete mental health, we're coping well, we're thriving, right? Okay, so it's about having a little think about, where do I find myself on the continuum? And this is a useful continuum for you to use at any stage, right? So particularly if we're going through a stressful event, or, you know, we're going through a period of time, let's say coming into the winter, for example, when again, a lot of people's mental health takes a dip, particularly after we haven't had a great summer. And that you know, our mental health, we do need that sunshine and we do need that warm weather and all of that. So this is where, again, it's just something that we want to be able to keep a track of. But that's essentially what our mental health continuum looks like. So have a think about, right, where am I going to place myself on that? Okay, so if we're in that place of languishing, right? So we saw languishing, we're kind of halfway down the continuum, kind of heading towards mental illness, but we're not that unwell, right? But we're not thriving either. So what does this look like? Okay, so some of the signs might include fatigue, right? So you might even be thinking like, I don't feel like I'm doing a huge amount, but geez, I just can't get myself going in the morning. I just don't feel like I can apply myself in work or in my sport or with the family or whatever it is. We're just feeling fatigued. And you might have gone to your GP and GP saying, no, there's no real cause here that I can find for fatigue. It's probably mental if they can't find anything there. Your bloods have come back normal, things like that. We've also got difficulty concentrating, right? Which is what we would generally notice in work, for example, or even on the road. You know, we're kind of saying, geez, pass through those 3 traffic lights and I've no memory of that. I was off somewhere else, right? And we might also be struggling to find the motivation, right, to exercise and to complete tasks. And as well, as we're now coming into the autumn months and then adding on further into the winter, you know, we can feel that. I mean, it's, what is it, 7:20? It's already starting to get dark. You know, and that does, as humans, we know that has an impact on us, right? And it does affect things like our motivation to exercise and complete tasks. And it does affect our mental health, right? So again, that's just a part of being a human. So if we are really noticing, again, look, we all have days where you just say, oh, I don't want to go. I don't really feel in the mood to go for that walk or go to that exercise class. That's normal. But this is really where you're struggling sort of day after day. And if that motivation is really not budging, right, that we're kind of stuck in that place. And completing tasks, so it could be even, I've got to go and do my shop for the week to put my meals together. And I'm finding it really hard, A, to get to the shop, B, to figure out what I need, and then C, to put my meals together, right? So you can see it's just, yeah, you're not mentally ill, but you're not kind of firing all cylinders either, right? So this is what we call languishing. Okay, so if you're languishing, you might feel life is unsatisfactory. Again, what often happens in this state, it's not that we're particularly unhappy, or it mightn't be that there's anything particularly terrible going on, but at the same time, we don't feel particularly satisfied. We're just feeling a bit meh, or we feel like we're just sort of stuck in a rut. Like we're not really feeling like, you know, we've got the energy and that things are moving forward, or maybe we're moving towards our goals, or we're just kind of stuck in this place. Even just in our life situations, it just seems to be kind of going against us. And we're just sort of stuck in this rut, right? And that's very much languishing. Life might feel a little bit meh, right? You're thinking, I'm just not particularly motivated. I'm not particularly happy. I'm not particularly unhappy, not particularly unmotivated. I'm just a bit meh. Right. Okay. So researchers then are really interested in trying to understand. So positive psychology has become very popular in the last few years, the more we understand the brain. So a lot of research being done now on this area and sort of discovering, well, what are those tipping points, right? Where we can predict, where does the flourishing stop? Where do people go into that languishing area? And then when we go down the bottom end of the continuum, and that's when we're kind of heading for depression. So we want to try and understand these. Hayley, you're saying totally related to being stuck in a rut. Yeah, very good. Yeah, excellent. And again, and then it just feeds into it, because if we're kind of in this place and we're fatigued and we're not feeling that progress and we're not feeling that confidence, and it just kind of goes around and around, you feel like a hamster on a wheel. So we want to try and sort of predict, okay, well, where is it at the point that people sort of flourishing starts to just drop off, and then people are languishing, and then sort of that, I suppose, the languishing gets worse to the point that people might become depressed. So that's what we want to try and understand. Ideally, we want people to be flourishing or a little bit under it, right? As best they can. Identifying what's happening now. Am I languishing? Am I flourishing? Or am I actually heading down further end? Am I feeling a bit depressed? And then it's being able to pick ourselves back up and move forward. Yeah, and not being the best me. And Hayley, that's a really beautiful way of putting it. You're just not your best self. So it might be that you feel that you're not as great in conversation, you don't have as much energy to do things, you're not being as creative, or you don't have as many ideas, or you're not organizing things as much. And again, yeah, you're just not the best version of yourself. We can't be the best version of ourselves all the time. That's not possible. But it's always about kind of that place that we want to be working towards. And what we have to be able to identify is when we are starting to head down to that languishing, right, what we can do about it, right? Okay, so these tipping points, as we're going to see, are going to involve our emotions. So when we're trying to say, well, what's the difference between someone who's flourishing, someone who's languishing, and someone who is depressed? Emotions are those tipping points, right? So as part of humans, right, emotion is a normal part of being a human. It's part of being the human experience, right? Okay. All humans, regardless of culture, they express the same and experience the same basic emotions. So we can go, as psychologists, we can study emotions all over the world. It doesn't matter if we go to New York, or we go to Papua New Guinea, we go to New Zealand, we go to Iceland, we will find the same basic emotions, right? So some of the aspects of being a human, like our culture, for example, does vary, but our emotions don't. So we're pretty solid on that. I just want to pop into the comments here for a second. Cheryl, mental fatigue is so much harder to find ways to recoup from. Yep. And it seems to take so much longer. Spot on, Cheryl. And particularly if you've gotten to the point of maybe burnout, exhaustion or burnout. And, you know, we don't talk about that enough, of the steps that it takes. You know, it's like having sort of a hangover, like a mental hangover. It takes time to bring ourselves back, to recover. The brain and the body have to recover. Yeah, absolutely. And Francis, we need to be kind to ourselves. That is spot on, Francis. But it's easier said than done, isn't it? Unfortunately. But that is the secret. I mean, if we can learn to be kind to ourselves in all situations, setbacks, stressful situations, I mean, we're really on the way to coming out the other side. But it's often, yeah, easier said than done. But you're spot on, Francis. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I'm struggling to do a comment in the actual screen chat. Okay, and I don't know, I've had problems listening to you to start with, so I changed.
Oh, well done.
Zoom.
I figured it out.
And I can now hear you. Okay,
Excellent.
but I can't figure out how to do comments. And I just wanted to say that actually, do you know what? I sometimes go from the very top.
Yeah.
Right into this.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes me a while to get back out. So I bounce in and out.
Yeah. Very good.
Is that normal?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And really what we're always sort of looking for to kind of identify that the state we're in is, let's say, I mean, particularly say for depression, for example, how we would identify somebody who's depressed is we're looking for them to be in that place for 2 weeks or more. right? Now, there's all sorts of symptoms that we need to have there to be present in order if we were to diagnose somebody as being depressed. But what we're looking for is that somebody is in this state over a period of time, right? And that there's not really much shift there. So yes, we'll have days where we're like, I am on fire. This is fantastic. Work was great. Family life was great. I feel so energetic. Gosh, great. Hit my goals. What a gym session. Brilliant. And we're in that flourishing place. And then some stressful event might happen the next day and we're like, oh no. And I'm going back down here. And then we might solve that quite quickly and we can work our way back up. So absolutely, we're never going to be stuck on that. And this is what I suppose the move towards understanding mental health is very much going in this direction, that we want to see where people are on that continuum and kind of helping them if they're going too far down to bring them back up. And equally, if they're kind of getting stuck in that middle point. So yeah, absolutely normal. Yeah, but it's a very good point. And do pop your comments in as you go. Put your hand up. Do interrupt me. I love it when people interrupt me. How do you tell depression? How do you tell depression and go menopause? I blame everything on menopause at the moment. Yes. And you know, the connection between menopause and mental health is really interesting. And we should have a discussion about this because I was talking about I don't think I've done. I haven't, but we should do one because it's very interesting. And the more that we understand it, the more that we realize that it's a lot less connected to what's going on physically in our body and a lot more to do with what's going on mentally. So when we think about often with menopause, we can kind of blame like hormones and things like that. And it's not to say that they don't impact our mood and things like that. They do, but they don't have as much of an impact as we, I suppose, if you want to say, allow them to have. So oftentimes, say, just for example, right, what would happen, a lot of women, let's say they're in work and they're starting to stress like, oh gosh, I'm feeling myself getting all hot. And then they notice themselves getting all hot and then they start to feel more anxious. And they start to say, oh God, I hope nobody notices. And then the anxiety goes up and up and up. And then oftentimes we can start saying, oh God, what if that happens again tomorrow? And then we're making ourselves even more anxious. And the more anxious we are, the more likely we are to have hot flushes and things like that. So it's a very, very interesting relationship when we don't understand enough about. But we also have to understand as well about, and we don't talk about this enough, at the time in life in which menopause hits. Because for oftentimes, I mean, particularly nowadays with women having children, you know, at older, for example, so they might have, you know, fairly young children. They might also have aging parents who they're trying to look after. Oftentimes, if you're working in your career, you might be at quite a high level. You might have a lot of responsibility and you're trying to juggle all of this. And then you've got all these physical changes going on top of it. It's a lot. So it's no small wonder really that mental health starts to take a dip. But how much of it is directly related to the biological changes that are happening, that's a difficult one to answer. And there's probably a balance in there somewhere. Part of it is responsible, is the hormones and things like that. And the other part of it is what's going on in life. And do we have the coping resources to manage it? And do we have help and support and all of those different things? And even just people's attitudes towards menopause. And women get very little support, for example, in the workplace. You know, there's very negative attitudes out there about women in menopause, and that also contributes. So oftentimes it's even our own attitudes about menopause and how we identify with menopause and what menopause means and all of these different things. So yes, absolutely they are. Yeah. And Cheryl, really tough, and it impacts memory. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very good. Sam, you have a menopause policy at work. That is excellent. Are you happy to tell us more about it?
I work for the NHS, hence
Yeah.
why I'm always looking so haggard and exhausted.
No, you don't, Sam.
But yeah, it was introduced relatively recently, and I'm a manager, so I was just purely out of self-interest as well. I don't think anybody else within my department is perimenopausal, but I keep warning them all about it. So that's the thing, nobody tells you about this. So you've kind of grown up in secrecy. But no, it's you know, reasonable adjustments, because actually what is misunderstood as well, actually, it surprised me that when you look at capability processes within the workplace and you know, sackings and stuff like that, the biggest demographic is menopausal women. So we are most likely to have difficulties at work and to lose our role, or get sacked or undergo capability because of it. So I think policies in place, certainly within organisations like the NHS, that help protect women from that, because as you say, we're often at points of our career where it's also very stressful as well, and you're dealing with multifaceted things, and the memory, because I think a lot of women struggle with sleep. That's really important for mental health and sleep problems. Whereas one of my teenagers calls it old lady puberty, which it's perfect.
It is perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
so yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. I definitely.
I'm also very, very fortunate. I work for one of the largest banks in the UK, and they have recognition across the whole of the menopausal and mental health wellbeing network altogether. They talk about mental health and wellbeing. They talk about menopause. They have workshops on it. They have mental health workshops across practically every topic you can think of: endometriosis, stress, everything. And we actually have cafe drop-in sessions, so as we actually support each other as a network, and it's males and females that join. You get line managers joining just to learn stuff.
Wow.
It's exceptional.
That is exceptional, but it's fantastic. Wow. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. And that is the movement. And I think there can be a lot of, I think, discomfort around discussion of menopause, particularly for older men. If you've got, okay, we're coming in and we're making policies, and someone says, right, well, we need a menopause policy, and people go, oh, what's that going to mean? What's that going to imply? Right. Which doesn't help. But we have to get over the discomfort of that. We need to have these conversations, and we need to put these policies in place.
But it's also a bit about education, isn't it? And education for women, and education actually for their partners or men in general. So it's something, having been through hell with perimenopausal and menopause, I actually researched it so much. I have at my clinic where I invite women along for a chat.
Brilliant. That's fantastic.
And last year I had 2 sets of men come, their husbands.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I wanted to learn more and how to be supportive and things like that.
Well, I've never laughed so much in my life, because I asked them all. The very first question was, what do you know about the menopause? Nothing.
Yeah. Oh.
Nothing. So I just told them, if you like, menopause for idiots. I basically told them the basics.
Very good.
Yeah. This is why your wife might be doing this. This is why she might be feeling this way. This is why she's shouting a lot and crying a lot. And it's working.
Yeah. Excellent. Well done. And fantastic initiative.
And it's free. I just say, bring your husbands along this night, 6:30, 7 o'clock, and we'll have a chat.
That's fantastic. Fair play to you. That's brilliant.
Good.
So we have a few comments in there. Brilliant, Jackie. Yeah, Tina's saying, great idea, Jackie. Fantastic. And Tina, you're an office manager and you're trying to bring in menopause policy, and have to go through male upper management to get it approved. Yeah. And fair play to you. And again, remember, the more confidence that you go in, if you go in and kind of go, oh, I need to have this conversation, the more you go in saying, we're having this conversation.
Quality and diversity, is the sexual discrimination. I can't remember which way around it is, but because obviously only women can. It's like pregnancy, where only women can go through it. They have to legally they have to put these policies in place. So walk all over them, be fine.
I think as well it helps, like you were saying about helping the husbands. Sometimes they don't know why their partner or wife is acting that way, and I think as well, for them to understand it might just help their home life a little bit better.
Absolutely.
It's a two-way thing, I think.
It has. Yeah.
The huge divorce rate that happens around menopausal aged women is massive, and nobody seems to address that there is a major connection between the two. You know, I talk quite openly about menopause. I'll just say, oh, just having one of those moments, or, you know, it's the old menopause. Sorry about that, but hey ho, brain's gone dead, you know. So just make light of it, but just bring it into the conversation
Normalize
all the
it.
time.
Yeah.
Normalise it, exactly, because it is normal.
I keep saying I'm having a senior moment.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So, right, on that note, right, our 6 basic emotions, we've got our anger, we've got our sadness, our happiness, our surprise, our disgust, and our fear. They're the basic emotions, and we've got other emotions that go alongside it, but those are our basic ones. And what we're talking about with our flourishing, and we're thinking about positive emotions, we're thinking about joy, we're thinking about gratitude, right? And again, it's boosting these emotions, because it's actually investing in these emotions to enhance our health and enhance our quality of life. So that's what we see when we invest our positive emotions, such as practicing our gratitude, boosting our joy, doing what we love, finding what we enjoy, whatever gives us that sense of fun. That's actually going to be very good for our health and for our quality of life. Okay. So, geez, the time's flying. People experience higher frequencies, right, of our positive emotions, generally more adaptive to stressful situations, resilient, and more likely to flourish in life. As humans, we all experience positive emotions and we experience negative emotions, and that's very normal, and we need the balance between the two. If we experience fewer positive emotions and more negative emotions, such as sadness and fear, we're going to feel a lot less satisfied with life, of course, because if you're in that place most of the time, you're not going to be feeling great about things. Experience physical and mental illnesses, and we're less productive at work, right? And just to give you, this is a really interesting ratio, right? So in order to flourish, you need to experience at least 3 positive emotions for every 1 negative emotion. So it takes 3 positive emotions to bounce you back from that 1 negative emotion, right? So that's where we've really got to be. So if we are struggling with our mood, we're struggling with sadness, we're struggling with grief, we're struggling with any of that, we're going to have to work really, really hard in order to be able to overcome that, right? And then if our positive emotions drop below that, we're just experiencing negative after negative, stress, low mood, bad news, all of these different things are just negative, then you're going to go straight into languishing. Right. And of course, with everything that's going on in life, right, it's understandable that people are languishing at the moment. Right. So in a very brief breakout rooms, we'll get about 10 minutes in the breakout rooms. But what I would like you to chat about is, how might languishing affect our healthy lifestyle goals? So if we go down to that center point of the continuum, what are the implications for us in terms of our healthy eating, our exercise, and our healthy lifestyle goals? So really thinking about the consequences of that languishing state. And then I want you to think about 1 or 2 suggestions for self-care. How are you going to get yourself out of that languishing state and back up to flourishing? Okay. So how might it affect our healthy lifestyle goals? And how can we boost our way up that continuum? Alrighty, so I'm just going to pop you into the groups. Just bear with me for a second. How many people have we got? 1, 2, 3. Okay. And no rooms. Here we go. Hello, welcome back.
Hello.
How did we get on? Okay, I'm going to go to room number 1. Amanda, Cheryl. Anyone in there?
We had quite a long talk with Karen, who's new, and it's her first night tonight, as well as, sorry, is it Jenny as well? Is it Jenny?
Yeah, Jenny, sorry, my mic was off. Yeah.
So and Karen reached out and asked for some help and support. So I think Karen, it'd be fair to, if you're happy to sort of talk through what we shared, what you shared.
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to share it, Cheryl. And I have to thank the ladies for actually helping me with some suggestions and ideas. But I've been in the program for about 6 weeks, okay? And normally I'm a positive person and have quite a positive mindset, okay? But over the last 4 weeks, I've had accidents, falls, I've knocked my knee, I do require spinal surgery. I find it difficult to walk anyway. I walked outside for the first time. I told my story with Michelle just yesterday on Facebook, and I shared my story, personal story and journey with TSD. But I'm having these dips, okay? And I am going pretty low when I have these dips. And I'm doing small things, okay, to actually help turn myself around. And I'm turning myself around within about 2 or 3 days. Yes. But I was asking the ladies about how do I find more coping mechanisms to actually bring myself back quicker. So, I mean, the things I'm doing at the moment, right, is I'm thinking, what successes am I having on a daily basis? Whether they're small, tiny, it doesn't matter. Well done, what is it that I'm doing well? What successes am I having? What goals is it that I have achieved? Good. What am I grateful for?
Excellent. Brilliant.
And then I've been told about this jar, okay? And actually putting sticky notes in the jar about real achievements. So I'm going to get a jar. And I take it this is the jar of achievements.
Yes. Excellent. That is fantastic. My goodness, that's brilliant. Well done.
So I asked the ladies for help. I shared what I was doing. But do you know what? From a mental well-being perspective, when I take the dips, right, and Michelle, if you spoke to Michelle, Michelle will share this with you. My dips take me pretty low, okay? And really, really low. So it's how I manage the coping mechanism for it.
Very good. Yeah. And I mean, what you're doing there is fantastic. I mean, talk about a wonderful checklist. I mean, you've got the gratitude in there, you've got acknowledging the positives, because especially when we go down to that place, when we get dragged down that continuum, it's almost like you kind of put on these glasses and it's this dark lens through which you're seeing life. And, you know, you can get stuck there and you just get stuck, and that's how you see the world, and that's how you see yourself, and that's how you see other people. And it's exactly as you said, what is the process of taking off those glasses and being able to see that other perspective and bring yourself slowly but surely back up the other end? So well done. I mean, I understand what you're saying. You'd like to kind of go through that process a little bit quicker, but to be able to engage in that process, that's fantastic coping.
It is, yeah. I would say those dips would get less. Would you say, Aofe, as the program goes on, Karen? Exactly. I think those dips will get less. I think you will be able to pull yourself out. But you're doing amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really,
I think so. It's great.
Yeah. That's spot on. Really, really good. And Jackie's spot on, right? Because the more that we practice it, the less dips that we're going to have. And the thing that we also have to remember is that this is not a journey in perfection. So as humans, we have that sort of default place that we go back to in times of stress, or if we've had a setback or things like that. But the main thing is that we don't unpack and live there. Right, that we do what Karen has done in saying, right, I've gone back to this place, I need to get myself out. I need to get myself out as quick as possible. And then it's about taking those steps. And that's hard. It's hard to do all of those things that Karen is doing when you're in that place. But that's the secret. And the more that you practice it, the easier it gets. And exactly as Jackie said there, the less likely you are to go back there. Yeah. Fantastic. Well done. Cheapers, that was super. All righty, and I'll go to the next room 2. Caroline, Jackie, Meryl, do you want to add anything in there? We've got a great list of how to boost our emotions there, yeah. Do you have a spokesperson? Or indeed, group three. Elaine, Francis, Hayley, anybody who would like to share their thoughts as we wrap up our mastermind for this evening?
I think the process of languishing, flourishing or languishing is personal to the person that's going through it. Everybody copes differently.
Yeah.
Everybody has different coping mechanisms, and everybody learns differently through TSD. So what might work for one person might not work for the other.
Exactly.
But it's worth trying everything.
Yeah.
So that's my view.
Yeah, we covered that about finding your own mechanisms. I shared my own personal experience of coming back from quite poor mental health at the end of last year, before I joined TSD. But the positive things, the self-care, it can just be I didn't really understand, because all of the self-care stuff that's normally put out there is like, take up a hobby, do some crafting. It's like, crafting, if I had a pair of knitting needles on my hands, I'd probably poke somebody's eyes out with them, because the thought of having to craft, I am not artistic. All of this stuff just doesn't apply for me, and I just kept going, well, that's not me. So I found my own things, and it took a little while. But some of those things I am still actually doing, which I haven't, I never would have imagined. But that finding something that works for you, that you can, that is an act of self-care, that
exactly
allows you to see your own value in your own self-worth, and that you're worth doing this. And then a while back I was in a breakout room, and think about kind of like acceptance of where you are at this moment in time, that it's not always going to be like this. You don't need to look into the depths of despair and just go, well, I am here at the moment. I liken to it being at a service station on the motorway. My journey is up at the motorway, and sometimes I just have to come off the services and stuff. And sometimes I take the back roads. Sometimes I get a little bit lost.
I also think don't put yourself under pressure, Karen. Don't put yourself under pressure. I think pressure can add to the dip. It could add to the languishing. So Sam says,
but you're right. Simplify it. Simplify it. Figure out what it is that works for you, what it is that's going to bring you that joy that you can build on, that's going to give you that sense of pleasure, that's going to give you that sense of happiness. And as humans, we're all so different. Thank God. I mean, imagine if we're all the same and we all had the same likes and we were all smiling about the same things. Be a strange world, right? The beautiful thing is that we're all like different things and we cope in different ways. And the main thing is that we find, those and self-care as well, which is so important. And Sam was talking about that, because if you can get really to the heart of that, because at the heart of self-care is valuing yourself, seeing your worth, and looking after yourself. And there is work that we need to do there as well, in terms of finding our value and finding our worth if we're struggling with that. But even if we're struggling with that, we have to start with that self-care, and what that looks like to you and what it looks like to somebody else, totally different. The main thing is that it's healthy and it's giving you those boosts, and it's helping you to manage through. Because look, life is full of ups and downs. It's full of very unfair situations, really crappy situations where you're just like, why? Right. And that's part of being a human, but it's about how we can manage it and how we can cope with it. And again, the ways in which we cope with it. And that's what makes the difference. And being on that journey, and our things will change. I mean, I'm mad into gardening, but 10 years ago, if you'd said, oh, go out there into the garden, I'd be like, sorry. And that's just as you get older and you find different things that you like, or you actually, I'm much better off when I'm really chilled, or actually I need something, maybe I need music, I need a dance class, I need to get up, I need to get moving, I need to talk more to my friend, whatever it is. But it's just a case of, I'm playing around and being on that journey of self-discovery. But I think thinking about that continuum, right? Where am I on that continuum? And if you are kind of down that other end, you're in that languishing state, it's about taking those steps to bring yourself up, but slowly but surely. And exactly as we're talking about there, we're not putting pressure on ourselves. We're just valuing ourselves, wanting the best for ourselves, and helping ourselves to get there. And exactly as Sam was saying, it's a journey. It's not a destination. And yes, we go off and we go in different places. You go, I get myself back up on the road. And you'll understand more about yourself during that process as well. Excellent. So listen, well done, everybody. It was great discussions. And thanks to everybody for sharing their experiences, because we all learn and we all benefit from it, which is great. So fair play to you. Really, really good. And listen, I hope everybody has a good rest of the week and a weekend. And I'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. And I look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aofe. Thanks, ladies.
Bye.
See you all soon.
Bye.
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 Good luck for tomorrow.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Good luck. Yes, indeed. We look forward to hearing all about it.